Yo, welcome to another episode of Open for Discussion. I'm your boy, C. Maurice Ball, and you know what to do when you see the little thing scroll across the bottom. Hit that subscribe and like button. Join our community because we got some great things coming on and coming up. And today, y'all, I'm gonna tell you what. This young lady that I have coming up today is a phenomenal person. She's been featured in several magazines. She's out here doing big things. She done won the award for best podcast in the area. She's out here changing lives and bringing stuff to the forefront in people's lives. And she is doing it big. And guess what? We get to talk to her. I am super excited about this conversation. And y'all know how we do. Without further ado, kick that intro. Well. I am introducing to some and presenting to others this phenomenal, awesome young lady, Miss Cookie Brown. How are you today?
Hey, that was a heck of an intro. You can introduce me anytime you want. I'm great now. I'm here for
just,
it.
just I could be your hype person. You doing the speaking engagement. I can come out and I could be your hype person.
Let me get these engagement
You,
books
how,
first,
how
but
you doing
yes,
today?
please. I'm excellent. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I am awesome. Thank you for pulling up. So I normally have a story on how I meet people, and I'm gonna tell you how I met this phenomenal young lady. So she was doing a live on TikTok one day, and I think it was right after the Keon thing. I think that's what it was, and she pulled me up in her live, and so and she was kind of talking about pastors kind of have this funny way of responding and saying things and doing things, and we chilled for probably about almost 30 minutes and kind of just was like, hey, I like that. And then I just asked her to pull up on my podcast and kind of stalked her a little bit because y'all know how I do. I be out in these internet streets stalking people and sending stuff. And she said yes, and she pulled up, and here we are. We get to talk to her and we get to sit back and laugh and joke and see how she made it to where she made it. So where are you currently at?
Well, I mean, right now I'm in Dallas in the studio. I'm in a very creative studio today. So, yes, I'm here. I'm located in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. I was in Dallas not too
Yeah.
long ago for an event that was held there, a singles conference. Even though I'm not singles, I was on the panel as the resident married guy and resident pastor on this singles conference. But I had fun in Dallas.
Dallas is a lot. I've been
So
here, November will be 3 years.
3 years. Where are you originally
Oh, we
from?
lagging. I'm a St. Louis
Yeah.
girl. I'm born and raised in St. Louis, but my sales career, I've lived in a couple of small towns. I've had to travel. So from college, my sales career started. So it put me in very tiny pockets of Midwest America. Pockets.
So you from the 314?
Yeah, all day, every day. North side, Walnut
Come
Park,
on.
Baden. Yes, the trenches. The trenches. Yes.
The Lou. Hey, I have some good friends that's from the Lou. So where do you fall at in the spectrum of your family dynamic? Are you the oldest, the youngest, the middle?
I'm the baby. Two older brothers, I'm the baby.
Oh, yeah, you come with a certain set of issues then, being the baby.
Nothing
Yeah.
but issues. I mean, quite a bit older. So yeah,
I
that's
I
the
get it.
baby.
I'm the youngest of three and the only boy, so I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, right.
So
It's
so in your
what it is.
so
We're
what's your family dynamic? So you said are your brothers way older than you?
yeah, like well, one just turned 44. The other one, he's pushing 50. He up there. So they're older. Nobody lives in the same city. So there's not a huge tight dynamic because we're just because of the age gap. So I was more so the one that was raised by the grandparents. So it's not a whole lot of dining. I mean, I unpack it a lot actually, but yeah, one that is has his career. The minute he went to college, left home, it was the same story for me. So growing up, like as an adult, once I hit a certain age, like 18, I've been on my own. So for family, it's I see you on holidays or whenever we get together or whatever misfortune you got going in life, we ain't gonna see each other for X amount of years. So it's a very interesting dynamic.
I get that's how family is. That's how family is. So they were out the house when you were in middle school. So you were pretty much raised as a only child.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say like once I hit 16, yeah, I was raised as the only child. But I mean, I got a big family, so it's one of them families where everybody lives on the same block. So I was raised around all of my cousins. Like we all went to the same schools and everything. So I wasn't really raised. I mean, I didn't have siblings around once I hit my teenage years, but I was always raised around a bunch of cousins. So it's just one of them St. Louis families. Everybody is always at everybody's house.
Those are the fun times. Those are those that's what growing up was back in the day. And you said something. You said 50. He's hitting 50.
Yeah.
Like that's old. 50's not old.
Well, I mean, it ain't old, but I'm only 42.
I'm 50.
No, he's not old at all, but we
Nah,
just,
you still a
you
baby.
got different lanes in life. So, yeah,
You still a baby.
yeah.
So so in your dynamic growing up,
I'm a receiver.
in your dynamic growing up in the household, were you since you were the only girl, did you have to be tough?
Well, it ain't even about being the only girl or being tough. You growing up in St. Louis, it don't matter what you are, you got to be tough. That's just the kind of environment you grow up in. I mean, I'm an '80s baby, so I grew up in the crack era. So there's just you really didn't have an option to be anything else. You had to be able to function. You had to be able to navigate growing up in them kind of neighborhoods. So it was never not, and I wouldn't even say tough. I just, because tough, that's a broad word. Tough can mean different things for different people. So I knew how to handle my own. I knew how to navigate. And I was always pretty social, so I always had friends. So
True, true. So did you have both parents growing up?
I did not. My mother remarried. I had a stepfather that she was estranged from as far as when I was younger. So I was raised primarily by my grandparents. Like she wasn't in a position to take care of us. She battled addiction. So yeah, I was raised in a two-parent home. It just wasn't biological parents. So I grew up with my grandmother and grandfather. But once I was 14, I lost my mother and my grandmother died a year apart.
Mm.
So in them teenage years, I was raised by a man. So from 15 on up, I was raised by a man. So I was raised by a widow
Wow.
from 15 to adulthood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did that have an effect on you? Was there an effect? Did it cause you to rebel or anything when you lost your grandmother? Was there some kind of rebellion with somebody? Were you angry, or did you accept it and kind of say this is where it is, and I'm gonna move forward from here? What did that look like for you?
Well, there's no rebellion because I mean, my grandmother was sick for a long time. And again, I lost her and my mother a year apart. So, I mean, with that, when you're a young girl going into I mean, the age 14, 15 is really your formative years.
Uh-huh.
So death was something I got familiar with very early in life. So folks was dying left and right. It was an auntie this year, my grandma's sister this year. So I mean, honestly, I was probably numb to it. You're not always taught how to grieve and everything like that. So I internalized it. And again, because you grow up around family, sometimes some losses you see coming, you're not necessarily shocked by, or you just, okay, this is kind of the cycle of life. This is what happens. So how do you navigate? Because I mean, I was a child, essentially.
Uh-huh.
So I just kept doing me. I was very a numb kid. I probably didn't deal with emotions till adulthood. So I kept going. You wouldn't have thought nothing was wrong. I was very active. My grandfather was very um, intentional about keeping me in sports. I was an athlete, so I always had something going on to where I did not have idle time. So I was busy, very busy, and that's kind of what carried me through, honestly.
That's I mean that saved me from the streets, having an active dad that kept me busy, that I didn't get time to get caught up in the riffraff that was going on around me. So that's very. How important do you think it was that you had a male that was in those formative years to be able to speak into you and edify you and encourage you? It sounds like he was a very very good grandfather.
No, actually, it showed me the importance of having a mother, having a female around, and why. I learned from being raised by a man at that point why single mothers are able to do it, because we're already emotional creatures. So we already got that. The empathy part we already have. We just have to pick up masculine roles too. It's easy for us to do both. Men are not able to do both. So he kept a roof over my head.
Okay.
He kept the bills paid, but that emotional labor that you need as a girl, a man alone can't do it. So I hear people talk all the time about you didn't have a y'all fatherless, and I'm like, man, I was raised by a man from the time that I was 15 till adulthood, and I didn't know how to channel my emotions because he couldn't teach me that. So I can speak to the opposite side y'all don't speak to. Y'all bash women, but men can only handle one part, and that's keeping a roof over your head and instructing you. These sports are easy for men to keep a child involved in, but there's so much more when you're raising a girl that she needs. So
For
I
sure,
kind of have a different take on it.
I totally agree with you. There's uh, a healthy balance of what you need with a two parent home is definitely a healthy balance of that because you need to learn the emotional stability and the emotional intelligence piece, which really just became a word recently. Um, you don't have that, especially if he was an old school grandfather who was a copy of a copy and didn't really know how to manage emotions. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can understand that. And so, what was high school like for you? Were you since you went to school with all your family? Was high school easy like transition? Were you a thug? Was you fighting? Was when you said you was an athlete, so you probably stayed active all through
Not a
high school.
thug. Yeah, I wasn't a fighter. I didn't there was no need for me to fight. I mean, there was, I had little things in the neighborhood with jealousy with girls. I wasn't a violent person at all. I was very social. I've always been a social butterfly. So making friends is not hard for somebody like me. I was part of the desegregation program. So I mean, I didn't go to a hood, ghetto, thug school, if that's what you want to call it. I was bussed out to schools with wealthy white kids. So I lived in the worst parts of St. Louis, but I was bussed out to I went to school with doctor, lawyer kids, and oh, this person's dad was a professional baseball player, a soccer player. So I was exposed to different economic backgrounds early on, which was perfect for me. It put me in a well balanced place that otherwise, if I didn't have that and I went to city schools, it wouldn't have worked out. So I was athletic. I was always one of the first, like one of the first black cheerleaders they had. I was the star on the track team. So school wasn't, I hated academics, but as far as socially, it was lit.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a trauma story from school.
You know,
I love the nerds. I was the perfect middle. I wasn't like the super popular girl. I wasn't a nerd, but people liked me. So high school was cool.
and I think that's a you said a couple of things. Like you didn't have the trauma experience in high school, and normally high school is where you kind of start to stockpile some trauma things, be it you doing something to somebody else or somebody else doing something to you, and then you go into a uh, uh, a desegregated school system, meaning that you get the balance of having white friends and still coming back home and knowing your identity, not having to struggle with the identity thing that normally happens when that happens because you take a young black female or black male and put them in a setting where they're the handful or the one or two, then it's a lot of identity stuff that they have to deal with. But it sounds like you kind of played that thing and rolled straight through it.
Well, no, that's you definitely that. I mean, when you go to school with whites and you don't realize you're poor, and you see they getting brand new cars by the time they're 16. So yeah, there is something you look for white validation. So I think anybody coming from the city in those kind of environments, I definitely did a little bit. But white girls, they loved me because I taught them, gave them the flavor they didn't have either. So as much as I wanted some of what they had, like the type of lives they lived, they had two parent wealthy homes. I was always at their house when we would have after school events that we had to come back for, as me being a dancer and cheerleader. But also, they wanted my swag. So it was almost a transactional relationship. So, yeah, you saw things about how
Right.
white folks lived, and because you didn't see models of Black success around you, not where I lived. But because my counselor was a Black woman and my cheerleading coach out there was a Black woman, so I had Black women, they were both Deltas, guiding me in this desegregation program. So again, I was lucky enough to have women in leadership once I hit high school that were able to speak life over me. So they essentially became mama and grandma. So I luckily had that.
That's dope. Like, that's dope. I think that's really, really dope that you found a connection and went through that. So how was you? Did you date in high school? You said something earlier, and I don't know if you really want to talk about it, and we don't have to. When you said it, you was violated when you were young. Did that scar you in any kind of way?
I said, what?
That you were violated by a man growing up?
I didn't say that. If we're talking about domestic violence, I think I talked about that with a fiance when I was older.
Oh, okay. I thought I must have misheard what you said. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So how was so
Yeah.
growing up? My bad. So in high school,
You're
did you date? Was you actively dating? Were you dating white guys? Were you dating what? Did you?
Yeah, I mean, I became a mother
No.
at 19. So my son's
Okay.
father and I, we went to rival high schools and we ran track. So we knew each other from. So I mean, yeah, I always dated. Of course, I always had a man. One thing I had in high school was a man. But I mean, my son's father, we went to rival high schools. That's literally how we met. We both ran track. So my son was essentially a track kid. So my senior year, we were at the hip, which is probably why I started getting distracted and things like that. But right as it was time for us to leave for college, and I mean, we'd had a pregnancy before, but he was hell bent on making sure that we were connected. So once I made it to college, I mean, within me getting on campus, I learned within a couple of weeks that I was, pregnant with my son. I'm like, all right, well, you can't just be trying to sprint off to Planned Parenthood. You're about to be a mama. And we got engaged shortly after. One of them, but yeah, I became a mom very young.
Okay. So where'd you go to college at?
I went to Missouri Southern State University in Joplin, Missouri.
Okay. And so when you
Yeah.
went to college, you were pregnant. Did you stay in college and push out and finish it and find that balance, or did you go back home and go to like a community college and still try to find that balance of being a mom and pursuing your education?
No, I stayed in the dorms the first semester, got an apartment. Second sem, I probably had my highest GPA ever my first semester of college, as a matter of fact, because going to that school, being a part of the desegregation program, like the school district that I was in, prepared you for anything. So my first semester of college was a breeze. So yeah, I went into labor on campus. He would come up, sneak them into my dorm, but we ended up getting an apartment off campus. So no, I think I took a semester off, and then I did online classes before going back on campus with my son in daycare. So yeah, I finished school. My son, just like my daughter, the way she's a studio kid, I was in journalism in college. I was a writer, so my son was always in the newsroom. So yeah, I got my bachelor's. I was a educated
That's
mama.
that's that's awesome
Yeah.
that you took the baton and kept running and figured it out. Like that's a that's awesome. I think that is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing
That's
now is like, I mean, back then, 2002, that was crazy, but now women do it all the time. It's no different from you, honestly, being pregnant while you have a job. You still got to go to work even though you're pregnant. You waking up in the morning, you still going to class during you're pregnant. After you have your baby, you take a little bit of time off. So it's honestly really no different than working if you have a support system around you. It's not, we have more things in place that allow women, mothers, to continue their education.
now absolutely, and it sounds like you had an amazing support system. So you're doing your college thing. And how did that engagement work out? Did y'all get married? How did that work out?
So it clearly didn't work. No, it's typical kids at 19 doing stuff they ain't got no business doing, and it's really not a healthy dynamic. So no, that didn't work out. That ended very quickly. And I wasn't heartbroken about it. It needed to. It shouldn't have happened. But it's just that typical young first time parent experience where you neither one of y'all know what the hell y'all doing. You 19, you're essentially babies trying to be grown. That's all it is babies trying to be grown and babies that don't know how to deal with conflict and all of that. And it just, I want to say it was probably over before I gave birth, but I like being able to walk around with a ring on my finger and flexing on people and saying I have a fiance. So if anything, it was more the aesthetic of the situation than what it absolutely was. But no, it didn't, and I went on to keep doing me.
Okay. Did, did you did you have time to pledge when you was in college?
My school did not have that. So I'm not,
Okay.
I'm not Greek. No, I don't think I was looking to be
Okay.
Greek. I was a mama. I was worried about being a mama. Them priorities
It,
changed real quick, but no,
that,
we didn't have that,
that's a whole different
unfortunately,
ball
in our
game.
small colony. Nah,
Uh, that's
no.
a so now you got your mom thing going on, you got your college thing going on, you have a relationship that's kind of in and out. At what point, what were some of the takeaways that you pulled out of just like your experience from transitioning from high school into the time that like you got into your apartment and you start figuring out like, okay, this thing called life is real right now. What were some of your takeaways or some of the things that you did to stay motivated and encouraged along that process?
I remember where I came from and I wasn't going back to that. So your environment is a hell of a motivator. Like I'm not going back to that. I said I was gonna make it. I wasn't gonna end up like a lot of the women and things that I saw in my environment. I was gonna make a life for myself. I was gonna figure out a way to be successful. So and also that I can get through anything. And me going through that experience, I don't judge anybody, and I don't. A lot of these conversations surrounding like motherhood and things, I laugh at it because I'm like, nobody knows until you're in that situation. So my takeaway is I have a heart for single mothers because I know that they are the champions of our community, and nobody can handle what they handle, and that it takes a lot to walk away from situations that aren't healthy. There's a lot of married women that don't have the balls to do what we do. So they locked in a situation where they're actually miserable. And that we are the women that people pull on. The women that did it right tend to pull on us more than anybody. So my takeaway is that Black women, single mothers especially, are the backbone of our community because we're trained, we built for it tough.
Absolutely, I could agree with that 100%. Because it is, and this is the thing about being a single mom. I think it's life changing for the young lady more so than it is for the guy because the guy don't have the the day to day things that they have to handle. And so I'm talking to a young 15-year-old right now who has a 2 month old baby, but he's still out here wilding. And I'm trying to tell him, like, your life didn't change, but this young lady that you have this baby with, her life is completely changed while you still out here trying to be in the streets and be a rapper. She got to worry about being a mom and how she's going to feed this child, and you're not contributing to anything. So I think moms, single parents in general, but single moms get a bad rap because they have to put their whole life on hold, and that's why I was like, what you did, you didn't stop your life because I came out of a
Right.
neighborhood where I see that all the time. You know, you see somebody get pregnant and that was it. Then it's not just that one; it's two or three, and life is completely over for them.
Right.
So, excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, life is
Um,
typically not ain't
so
over. It's just you get rerouted. But yeah, it's a challenge, and you either got a village or you got to know how to swim, one or the other.
Well, it's one of those things where you lose focus on the dream. Like you had a motivator. You was determined not to go back to the hood, and that's what motivated you. Most people don't have that motivation. It, I'm just in general, but
Yeah,
for
well,
you
the
to
hood is not a, and I
take the
want to make
bag
that.
and just,
I want to make sure we're clear. The hood is not a bad place, y'all. So it is where movements start. The hood is very important to the culture, but it depends on what hood you come from. And the thing is, some women don't necessarily have that dream to begin with. So if you don't have a dream and you get pregnant, yeah. So it just kind of it's going to be a different situation for everybody. And women that have a dream before they have kids, it has been my observation they keep going. But the ones that typically aren't even afforded to dream, yeah, they fall by the wayside.
okay. So she said something very clear, y'all. I want y'all to hear this. The hood is not a bad place. Do not get it messed up that the hood when you hear the word hood, that it is a bad place. Hood, that's just the slang word for the neighborhood. So, and in
Yeah.
that neighborhood, we've grown up, and you get all the stuff that you need to survive in the real. And when you get older, if it wasn't for the hood, my neighborhood, I would not be the person that I am today. So do not get it twisted when you hear the term hood. For those who want to equate hood things with bad perceptions and things like that, do not do that, because it's not that. It is not that.
Right.
So so in your college journeys, after that relationship ended, did you happen to get into another relationship where you what was your motivation? Was you career focused and trying to make sure that you were established so that your son could have? Did you come across another relationship? What happened in that between the time that you ended that last relationship and then you transitioned into the real world?
I was focused on my career. I mean, I was in college. I was worried about my books. I didn't get into another relationship throughout. I mean, because that was my freshman year of college. So after that, I was focused. My head was down in my books. I was trying to establish myself as a writer. And there was no relationship after that. There was no relationship while I was in college. I was clocked in and locked in, clocked in and locked in. Done.
Okay. Did you
Until later.
graduate? Did you
Yeah.
graduate within your 4 year time, or did it take you a little bit longer because you were juggling mom being a mother and trying to balance your schoolwork?
It was 5 years, which wasn't really a big deal. So just an extra year, just because I took a semester off and I wasn't piling on a bunch of courses. But no, I ended up instead of 2005, it was 2006. So it wasn't no big thing to me. But yeah, I locked in and I got it done. When you got stuff to do, you got stuff to do. And I mean, I had a dope village of friends around me. So no, there were no distractions after that. Zero. When you a mother and you that
Uh,
young and you college and motherhood is going to keep you busy enough, especially when you're involved in things on campus. So I was busy, really busy, and I wasn't in a rush. When you get a situation like that, and you don't want a relationship after you got a situation like that. I had a young son, so I'm not going to bring nobody around my baby. So there's that part too. I wasn't trying to bring strangers in my son's face. Like, and then granted, because he was a campus kid, he was around athletes all the time. Like, he would get his haircut by the basketball players in the dorm rooms. The girls were watching for me while I was editing in the newsroom. So the college was the village, but as far as romantically, I would say that's been kind of been a consistent with me to adulthood. Outside of that relationship, dudes were just not a focus for me at all. They went.
so, so that means that, I mean, because you're a young mom and you got things to do, so it's not like you're in and out of these relationships because you're protecting your baby, right? Like, don't want a bunch of, like you just said, I don't want a bunch of guys around
Well,
my
more
child.
protecting me.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I just
that's
didn't
true.
want. It wasn't just him. I didn't want guys. Period. I was celibate. Like after that, I was celibate for the remainder of college. I wasn't when you go through certain experiences, you don't just jump into relationships. And I'm a Gemini, I get bored quick. So it ain't even about that either. I'm not somebody that you can pull easily. I can do what I want to do. If I want to be pleased, I can do that. But just even now as a person, I don't really get attached to people like that. I'm not that girl. I know there are people who jump from relationship to relationship. I might have a like here and there, but for the most part, I mind my business. If I like you, you consider yourself lucky and blessed. But the level of bored is almost criminal with me. It takes a lot to hold my attention. My son's father, he was losing my attention while I was pregnant. So it just, you gotta work.
I
When I
heard
get traumatized, I'm
I
gonna
was
shut it
talking
down for a long time.
I was talking to another little somebody who has a
Go
Gemini. I
ahead.
said it's easy to get the attention, but it's hard to maintain the attention.
Yeah, when we like you, but you got a small window to lock it down before we just like, and if we let you in that window and you fumble it, it's a wrap.
Uh, it's a
It's a
wrap.
wrap.
Yeah,
So I'm lucky enough to say that men haven't been the sum plum of my experience of life. Like a lot of my journey in every chapter is not wrapped up in a man.
that's great. Honestly, that's great because just is. That just is. So what was one of your biggest challenges or biggest hurdles that you faced between the time of your before, like after you graduated to get into your career? What was one of the hurdles or something that came across that you were just really like, oh, this was a blow. This really hit me hard.
Well, the blow is thinking that you're just going to graduate and have a career. So I think it's just the reality of what college is for anybody. You think that because you go to college, you're going to graduate and get this high paying job. That's not realistic for anybody. So of course that first 2 year window was rough because I'm working low wage jobs. Like my first job where I made decent money was a call center, but it was like a second chance call center. So you had like drug dealers and drug addicts, people, they just hired anybody. So these were people that worked until they got their next paycheck and then they clocked out and didn't come back. But those were the ones that taught me how to sell. So my biggest blow was just not coming out of college with no money the way I expected. Like my car after graduation. So I mean, I just thought that was the end of the world, but really it was the beginning of everything because I had to learn how to really just step into my faith and just know that like thought that was the worst time of my life during that period. I didn't have a career yet. I didn't have my car anymore. Like, oh my goodness. But me getting my first sales job at a call center and me being around folks that didn't have a degree and didn't come from where I came from, it humbled me. Like completely humble. And I watched how people hustle when their back was against the wall and they really had something they wanted. So when somebody trying to get that hit, when they trying to get that weed, you listen to them hustle on the phone. So I learned how to sell listening to them like, damn, okay. So I have a lot of respect for people that don't have college degrees. They're probably the people that get cast aside are literally the smartest people in society. Like people that have been in prison, that have overcome addiction or whatever, that they got the gift of gab. They're probably the best entrepreneurs out there. So my biggest blow was just I didn't make a bunch of money coming out of college. But that's the reality for most people.
Yeah, and I think that college is sometimes overrated for everybody because we push people into college, and college might not be for them. It might be a trade, it might be something else, but college is what we push, and sometimes it's not the right avenue to push. But because education was pushed onto us, it's one of those things where we then perpetuate what was pushed onto us. And the education is getting into a trade or a skill set and learning the knowledge of that instead of just going off to college and wasting money. Yeah, I
Yeah.
respect everybody who's
Yeah,
out here
a lot of
who's
people,
grinding that may not have a college degree.
yes, a lot of folks in student loan debt that should have never went to college to begin with. They did it because it's what they were told to do, but we understand it because a lot of our parents were not able. So they just wanted us to have access to
Right.
what they never had. But little did they know it's a setup for financial failure when you don't do it right. Like a lot of us survived off student loans, refund checks. I know I did. My son had Nikes, Jordans, and everything else. Had brand new outfits once them checks hit. But $3,000, $2,000, you can spend that up quick. That's a lot of money to a 20
Right.
year old. Like $2,000 is a lot to a 20-year-old in 2002, 2003. So yeah, it's wild. It
Yeah.
ain't for everybody.
It took me it took me about 12 years to pay off a student loan that I didn't even finish college. And I paid that thing off, and
Mm.
I was happy to the mug when I paid that joint
Whew.
off.
Man, listen,
Skip it.
send them student loans on up to glory. Send it on up to glory.
So you are you so
uh-uh.
you graduated with a journalism degree. Is that what you graduated with? Oh no, I think I read communications.
Mass communications journalism emphasis. Yeah. So mass comm is radio, TV journalism. Yeah.
Okay. How, now, did you ultimately get into the field, and then how did that work for you when you got into the field?
I didn't. I went into sales. That's what I'm saying. The biggest blow when I graduated was that I didn't get a
Uh-huh.
job immediately. So that's how I ended up, like I said, my first job making money was at the call center.
But you never made it into your degree. You never made it into your field of
No,
of what you.
no,
Wow.
I was in.
Okay.
I mean, I was pretty good. I mean, the first award I ever won was in college for a news story. I was an award-winning journalist, but like the average salary for a journalist was 25 grand a year at that time. And then I learned about being blackballed and the good old boys club. I was in a small town. I did well, but going on interviews for them papers, they all knew each other, and because I didn't act move the way I was asked to move, it blocked a lot of opportunities. I was asked to come back for a 6 year as editor in chief, but that would have knocked somebody else out of her spot. So it was very shady. I had a kid, I had a mouth to feed. I'm ready to graduate. I don't want to come back for another year to be over this paper that's very draining. Journalism is very stifling. I always knew I just wanted to use my voice and do what I wanted to do. You were not allowed to do that on the chart at Missouri Southern State University. You had to write within the what I'm saying, within the walls of what they allowed you to do. So it made it not very enjoyable for me at all. But yeah, I learned some real lessons when it was time to graduate. I would go interview for a certain newspaper, and the our whatever you want to call them that was over the department would see me in public and be like, "Hey, Cookie, so I heard that you applied for a job at the so and so press. You got to tell me about these things." So when I graduated, I definitely had a bitter taste in my mouth from what happened to me for not coming back another year to be editor in chief of a paper that I did not want to be editor in chief for. You didn't even have a life as a managing editor. So I knew that you had to eat, breathe, and sleep the newsroom, and I just didn't want to do that. But I still wanted to write, so one of the counselors and whatnot was like, "Cookie, you might not want to hear this. I hated it, but I think you would be great at sales and you would make a lot of money. I think you should explore sales." It was T.R. Hammerhand, who passed away a couple of years ago, but he told me to try out sales, and I did. And I moved up quick, in sales. So no, I never went back. It was always there that I wanted to tell stories, but I went into sales. I wanted to get me an adult folks job. So that's what I did.
And so when you got into sales, you rocking and rolling. You're a mom. What was one of the things that in that time frame in that era where a couple of years after college, now you done start to climb this ladder in this sales position. What were your challenges that you faced with? Were you blackballed? Were you was like you said you was in a good old boy town? Did that keep you from actually progressing in certain companies? Did you try to transfer? What were your challenges in that particular area of your life?
It wasn't a challenge at all because I was the first. And during that time, like you being the first, you're going to deal with a lot of microaggressions, but they have to have their token. So I was a very nice token in my professional sales role after the lot came with it. So when you're the first, there's a lot of stress on you. I was still code switching back then. I wasn't wearing my natural hair, which I went natural at a time in '05 where it wasn't a big thing, but I always had a wig. If I had a job interview, we knew that we had to have a certain aesthetic. So me living in a small town, I learned real quick to blend in, to be that special Black girl, that smart Black girl, that talented Black girl that the companies really wanted to hire. And it worked out well for me. Definitely got some promotions. But it was the BS that came with it, the microaggressions, the racist customers, the managers that didn't understand or didn't want to understand. It was always frustrating because I wasn't happy. So on paper, I looked great. My resume was hitting, but it was just you when you the first or one of two Black people or the only Black girl or the first Black girl in a space, you are the litmus test for what folks can get away with. You are the guinea pig. And that was a significant amount of my sales career, especially early on. It's just you got to play along to get along, and you didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. You wanted to get promoted, so you kind of sucked it up. But I was rebellious, so there was a nice amount of pushback from me.
So you said code switching. What was the internal battle that you were having, like when you would go in there and I know you were doing what you had to do in order to move up. You like, I got to hit this switch. But what would you share with somebody right now who's kind of in that space that they might feel that they have to code switch in order to advance or to be positioned to take advantage of some opportunities? What would you share with them?
The thing about a question like that is it's going to be different for everybody. It depends on how you raised and what you want, because there are some of us that love code switching. We love it. We want to move up. We want to be in those spaces. We want that validation. So it's going to be different for everybody's goals. If you want that to be your life, go for it. But if you're somebody that is proud of your Blackness, you're proud of your hair, you're proud of our history and all of that, it's going to be very difficult for you. So every Black person, because we're not a monolith, it's going to be case by case basis. So if you want to code switch and because you can be in, and that also depends on where you live. So in a city like Dallas, you might get with a certain company, you ain't got to code switch because you're around a lot of Black people. In some areas, maybe a city somewhere in Iowa or like Joplin where I was, you might be the only Black person. So it's going to always depend. In 2024, I don't move the way I did back then. So back then it was, a lot of us are first generation college graduates. Like, this is all new for us. So the way I navigated my career in 2008 and 2009, I wouldn't give that advice to nobody in 2024 because you don't have to. We got DEI companies trying to not look racist, trying to look inclusive. So the rules are not the same as when I first got into corporate. So it's all going to be based off what your goals are. And all skin folk, we don't operate as a certain type of kinfolk.
100%.
I'm in Dallas. They're very
100%.
conservative here. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to depend on what spectrum you fall on with your Blackness as to how you operate in corporate spaces.
That's true. That is true. The you could have the perception that you see somebody that look like you in spaces that you want to be in and realize like, oh, they not like us. they are not like us.
Learn that real quick. And if it's two Black women, trust and believe they're going to pit you against each other because they make you feel like there's only room for one. So you're clawing. I experienced that in my career. So you got to convince the other Black woman like, hey, it's only two. Let's look out for each other. So it's a tough space to be in. I'm not in that space no more right now. I don't miss it. So I don't know how I would operate. I'm in that space. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So what was one of the in corporate America? That's one of those things where you just said something like, it's two of y'all, and they're going to play y'all against each other because the fear that that it only has to be one. You've experienced that, like they put you against a coworker, and you got a decision that you have to make.
Well, sometimes they ain't even got to do it. We do it. We do it. We come in and you automatically you both trying to suck up to the manager. You're trying to make the boss your bestie. You're trying to be the favorite Negro. Like, it's just, it's horrible. And it all goes according to your geographical location. So to me, I would never be in a situation where I'm the only Black girl in a working of two. That's just a setup for so many things, so much trauma. You need therapy, because you are literally dealing with microaggressions for 8 hours every day. That's a lot on your mental health.
For sure.
When you know better. So God bless those that still do it. But good man, no, that's just no way for nobody to live, in my personal opinion. It's the biggest scam is that that's a blessing. Like we are looked at as the token, but the minute you get out of line, they're gonna let you know. Never mind the fact that you are equally as
Yeah.
qualified as all of your colleagues. When you stop being
Or
palatable, when you
more.
stop being friendly, when you stop entertainment, you are going to get checked. You are gonna get humbled. And they're gonna remind you, oh, you're not a team player now. And they're gonna work to get you up out of there. Same
That is
script,
true.
different
So my
cast.
wife currently operates in a high corporate position, and she is the only black female in her company. The only one.
Yeah, bless it.
Yeah. So, but she
Bless
been in the
it.
game. She been in the game for a minute. So just like you, she know how to move those pieces on the board. Uh, so in the so are you passionate about you're passionate about journalism and things like that, right? That's your passion.
I'm passionate about truth telling, and truth telling comes in all forms.
Okay.
I'm a truth teller.
Okay. Okay. Elaborate on that a little bit. Like, explain that to somebody who's listening. Says she's a truth teller. What's she talking about? What is she telling the truth on politics? She telling the truth over here on marriages and dating? Is she telling the truth on guys out here that's in a closet and they out here trying to sleep with women? What are you telling the truth on? What is that?
Anybody can be a truth teller. Anybody with a life experience can be a truth teller. You are speaking your story. That's truth telling. You holding spaces for other people,
Okay.
that's a truth teller. So that's not really a label. Like I went through things as a single mother. I talk about it. I'm a truth teller. I've dealt with things dating. I've dealt with things in corporate spaces. I share those stories. I'm a truth teller. There's a difference between a truth teller and an advice giver. I don't give advice. I'm a truth teller. I speak on what I know, what I've experienced, but I never label myself an advice giver in what I'm doing or a journalist. I just truth tell. That means I'm speaking from my experience. You can take it or leave it. This is what I've seen.
Well,
I've been in the activism world. I've seen this. That's a truth teller.
and your story is your story, right? Like, can't nobody tell you
This is
that
what I
things
see.
that happened in your life didn't happen because they
Yeah. This is
because
what I
they
see. Yeah.
did.
Anybody,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's I like that truth. You're a truth teller. I like that.
Yeah. Not an advice
Go ahead.
giver.
You should get a
I don't get
shirt. Truth teller.
I mean, it's so
So
many of us.
when
That's
did you
essentially
when
what
did you know that you
podcasters
wanted
are. I'm sorry, what
when
was
did you
that?
know that you wanted to get into podcasting?
I mean, the fact that I have a background in journalism is kind of inevitable, I would say, because journalism is a form of storytelling. So it's always been in me to talk. I'm a talker. So that's a no brainer. It was just a matter of me respecting the space enough to come in it. I didn't want to be a podcaster at all. I just used to go live while I was at work. I used to go live during protests that popped off in so 2014 was probably the year where it was like, okay, we got to start sharing stories again. And it wasn't even like a plan. I would be in my car. You in your car for 8 hours a day on a sales job, you get bored and you want to talk to somebody. So me going live or posting in my stories, that was just my way to keep my sanity. I had stuff to say. I needed this day to go by, and I wanted folks to know what little hick town I was in case I came up missing. So it wasn't really a strategy or I'm gonna do this. It was like, bro, I'm bored. And then I was going to protest, and it was like I gotta show people what's really going on out here. So again, that's where the truth telling comes in. At I'm showing you what's happened. I'm recording these stories and I'm letting y'all know what it is versus what you're being told. I'm here in the trenches. I'm showing you. So those two worlds just merged. And the first friend that said you should start a podcast because you technically video blogging anyways, I was like, no. I have a degree in mass communications. I respect real journalists. Hell no, I wouldn't start no damn podcast. Everybody and their mama got a microphone. Like, no. I didn't respect it. And the thing is, I have a podcast, but I still feel the same way. I respect people that go to, and not even necessarily going to college, but study the craft, put in the time, put in the work, because you can see a huge difference between them and everybody else just wanting to get a mic. So I still throw shade, even though I got a podcast. I even learned how I need to be better. So it just came from me being a truth teller. And I just finally put a logo, a mic, and put the message on different outlets. That's all it was, is my regular life, what I was already doing. And I just I just finally went ahead and did something about it. Look, I need to make sure
So
we
in 2014, was
marketing
that
and
Ferguson?
good Lord. It was.
It was. So you were frontline in the trenches of Ferguson, and just telling your story from that angle, from the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was living in Kansas. I was living in a small town working, but I was on the highway. Like every time I got PTO, every weekend I was driving 6.5 hours. So we all did. Like to me, that's the first content creators, to be honest, out here. Where folks started going viral was because of the protests. Like you had CNN and Fox News version, then you had those of us that was on the ground. So that's really what I think people thought my podcast, when I first announced I was going to drop one, was going to be about behind the scenes with protests. But a lot of that stuff was so traumatic. I was just trying to find joy again and talk about other things that didn't involve tear gas and cops and, police
Right.
violence. So, yeah, no, I was out there. That was the first form of content. We just didn't realize it at that time.
Yeah, that the Ferguson, and then that equally comparable to that was Breonna Taylor stuff. And I was front lines in the Breonna Taylor stuff. So I understand, like, I was showing the behind the scenes of what was going on. Really wasn't trying to podcast. I wasn't trying to podcast, but I was just trying to show people what they didn't show on the news, because all they were showing on the news was the violence and all the rowdy stuff and all that. It was a lot other stuff going on that people behind the scenes, or people that didn't come down, or the world didn't get a chance to see. So I totally get that. Like, just sharing some positive things that in the moments of desperation and anguish, and just trying to shed a different light in that. And it was because of y'all that a lot of things, like those protesters that was on the ground in Ferguson, y'all pushed the envelope for a lot of things to take place. Y'all were the
Oh, yeah.
foundation for BLM. Y'all were the foundation for a lot of the other protests. A lot of the things that tables that I was sitting in, when it came down to planning and strategizing, talked about Ferguson as the blueprint of how to do it.
Because everybody from them cities came to Ferguson. Like the people that were behind Breonna Taylor, I know a couple of them. I don't fool with them. I know a couple of them organizers. I know a lot of people in this space that, I mean, that's a different conversation. But yeah, like when Ferguson popped off, a lot of those organizers from different cities came to Ferguson and got trained. We had direct action training. They came down to learn what not to do, legal funding and all of that. Everybody came and ate off Ferguson. So naturally, they had the tools. Once the fight came to their city, of course they still made the same damn mistakes, which still to this day pisses me off. It's lather, rinse, repeat. But a lot of them came and got on the ground training. I think that's where my frustration, and I knew that the thing I took away from that is like, you got to tell your stories, because if you don't, you leave it to other people to tell it for you. So when I saw this thing get turned into the Black Lives Matter movement, which blew us away, because we were like, who said that? But when the media names something a thing and everybody rallies around it, you just go with it. But that ain't what the hell it was ever. But you just stop fighting after so many years and just roll with it. Whatever it is, what it is. So
Right.
that was where I learned the need for truth telling and what happens when you don't when you don't document your own news, be your own media.
Did that spark any other advocacy in you? Like, do you take a like what other things do you take a stand for at that level or that capacity, that you are ready to say, you know what, now I'm going to push the envelope on this? Did that kind of spark something in you to champion some other things?
Well, it made me prioritize blackness. It's all encompassing. When you're talking about Black lives, all of that is a part of it. Reproductive health, Black motherhood, Black everything, that you don't separate it. Because I mean, from that movement, other things came up, supporting people in their political endeavors, like Cori Bush getting elected. She came from Ferguson. So that was my first time like getting involved in anything. But I mean, after Ferguson and so much happened in that window and so much trauma and so much depth, a lot of us did not make it here today. I champion prioritizing yourself as a Black woman and stop trying to be everybody's savior. That's what I took away from that, because it took a lot out of me. And I saw what it cost a lot of other Black women, and that nobody was there to look after us when we either lost everything, whether it was family, whether it was your mental health, whether it was your livelihood, and nobody showing up for you in the way that you were showing up during those times for Black men. It taught me to champion rest and to champion joy, because we are expected to be this strong horseback warrior for everybody, but once we lose it all. So I learned some lessons through that. I read the story of Elaine Brown. Like during the protest, she became one of my favorite civil rights heroes. She held the highest rank as a woman in the Black Panther Party. But when I read her story and what she went through, you know, when we had a private brunch with Angela Davis during the protest, they brought her to St. Louis and we all got to sit at her feet and eat and ask her questions before she did an event where she spoke about her book. Like, it just taught me Black women don't repeat the same mistakes that women before us did. Prioritize joy, prioritize rest. You can't save everybody if you ain't even looking after yourself.
That is true. That you know, I think Black women are get overlooked. We call on y'all for so much, but we also society throws so many arrows at y'all and cut y'all on the Achilles so that y'all can't run. And a lot of that is due through systemic oppression that comes through music and things like that. Like we depend on y'all, we need y'all so much, but we also degrade y'all and demean y'all so much, so it y'all don't get a chance to fully be on full display in your full glory until
Yeah,
you need it. Like the last election, it was the Black women that showed up that was like, nah, we about to push this envelope. And
yeah.
most likely this election is going to be the same thing. So I salute you for standing up and creating space and holding space for Black women and being an example to younger Black women who are coming up in the trenches, that are looking at you and see the stuff that you do and the things that you're in and the things that you stand on, and you're an example to them. So I salute you for that, for real.
Yeah, it's a thankless work. I was smart enough to say, look, y'all got it. Let me go live my life and take care of myself. Y'all good. Y'all got it. Y'all got it.
You wouldn't be able to do that if you tried.
I did, and I continue to. I rest. You hear me talking? I'm laughing about stuff. I'll share some things, but I don't put myself out there like nothing no more. That being a part of that cost me a lot. I learned a lot. And that's a side conversation that a lot of us women have. Some of those that gave the most lost the most. And unless you built a career off of it, but I get those career activists and people like that. But for folks that have regular lives and didn't look for celebrity throughout that, or their next political endeavor or whatever you want to call it, some of us said, let me go live with the time I have left. And I don't want to run myself into an early grave or have a heart attack. So let me figure out what living for me looks like for once.
That's good. So do you and your son have are you really close with your kids, with your children?
I think I was so hard on my son. He is just trying to figure out his way. I pushed him a lot. So, I mean, he grew up during a time where I was out there in the streets. So he probably got neglected a lot for the protest because he was always with his other family, with his dad's family, for me to be out in the streets. So I learned some tough lessons from that. Like, okay, you went from pushing him as an athlete and making sure he didn't fall victim to certain things, and you wanted him to be a winner. He won all these championships and stuff, but that same emotional stuff that you missed growing up, you couldn't necessarily get that to him. In fact, he's here right now. He was in Houston, but the hurricane hit, so he had to come home to mommy. So he's here, and my daughter's 4. I wish I would not be close to a 4-year-old, but we good.
Well, I mean, that's just over time. You learn from what you think is a mistake from your older child to your
Yeah.
younger child. That's just the growth and maturity on your part. You see some gaps and some spaces.
Yeah, you got to let your child explore, especially when you have a child that you had on a very tight leash and you kept very busy. He was just as busy as I was. You got to let him get out and explore. If that means I'm moving to another city and, just kind of figuring out who they are as a young adult, then so be that. I love when people give parenting advice who have very young children. I'm like, nah, let them hit about 18 and 19 when they can start making their own decisions and they are no
Right.
longer under your roof. Then you decide what type of parent you are. That's when the real work starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when they're
It's,
younger, you can still control all the outcomes.
yeah, they up under you all the time. I mean, some people have grown kids that are up under them all the time, but that's not my experience. But you gotta let them go out and live their own life and have their own experiences, which you not dictate everything.
So, do y'all have a tight relationship now? Are y'all close?
We are as close as a 22-year-old that can now do whatever he wants to do, and his mama is. We straight. He don't call me for everything. He calls me when he needs something. He turns into that little kid again. There's every 22 when he needs money, when he needs stuff, that he turns into that child. So that's that's the lovely experience I get to have now. He cool and he mind his business and he's living. But when he needs mommy, he turns into that child.
That is so funny. I have a soon to be 19-year-old, and he is the kind of the same way. He'll come, and I know when he wants something because he'll just hover. He'll just
Oh yeah. They help. You hear from
yeah.
him all the time. You get me 5 messages a day. Hey mom, I got a question. Boy, what you need? What you need? So
So, does now in that dynamic, do you talk to him about like dating or anything like that, like how to navigate out of these streets at 22, or are you talking to him about like life things, or what are y'all conversations that he gives you access to have?
well, he's a late bloomer. So on the dating side, we don't have much of a conversation. I always kind of had that little awkward, nerdy little kid that really just stayed to himself. He's very introverted. He was that way as a child, and he's that way as an adult. So we don't have a whole lot of dating conversations because he really just stays to himself. That was always him. So our conversations of anything is like, what is it you want to do with your life? Like this, I can give you advice, but at this age, he talks to men more than me. So as a mother at a certain age, they're going to go to the uncles and things like that more than you. So I don't press those kind of conversations. Ours is always like, what is he trying to do career wise and what it is he feels like he wants to do or don't want to do or what his next move is or school that just, yeah. So his personal life dating, he ain't got much going on, but he also it's a need to know. So
So how did you form the Dirty Bag Podcast? What made you come up with the Dirty Bag Podcast?
I didn't come up with the name. That wasn't my choice. That was put on me. The universe gave me that name. It was going to be called the Sticky Notes at first. So I gave the backstory of it for me, truth telling and all of that. The name was going to be something completely different. So I want to say about 2 months before it launched, I was just minding my business and it was put on my spirit. And I was like, what? Okay. So that's how you figure out when things are meant for you to do, when you don't chase it. I had an idea, a name for it for like 3 years because I had all these little sticky notes on the wall of topics that I would do if I ever started a podcast or started blogging and all of that stuff. But when it came time, when we got close, it changed. So it would have never been a name that I would have picked on my own. It most certainly was not my choice at all.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't
Okay.
me at all.
So just based off of it's the dirty bag. It's like, what is that? I kind of went through and looked at some of when you're asking people, what's in their dirty bag. What's in your dirty bag?
Everything we just talked about in the last 30 minutes. Everything you just asked me, that is my bag, all of it. It's just me navigating life as a black woman in her 40s. That is a mother that has had a nice little gap with her children that's been through the social justice side of life, but has also navigated being a black woman in corporate in predominantly white spaces. Like my dirty bag, your dirty bag is really your life and you unpacking your shit. So a dirty bag can be anything for anybody, and my dirty bag changes from season to season. So what my dirty bag was last year ain't the same thing this year. Like last year, it was me working hard and just proving myself. This year, it's okay. What am I supposed to be doing next? How do I feel about my friendships right now? How do I feel about rest? How do I feel about the next chapter of my life and not going back to what's comfortable? Your dirty bag is always you unpacking your stuff, and every day you got something to unpack. So your dirty bag is life. That could be good, bad, indifferent, ugly, whatever it is you're sorting through. So your bag is never fully clean because you're always sorting through something. Once you get this issue, your bag is gonna get dirty again because life is gonna always life. Things will
For
always be
sure.
worth celebrating, worth unpacking. So yeah, it's pretty simple. That's why I always ask people. I give folks to the opportunity to say what it looks like for them, so folks can be mindful and be thinking about what is my dirty bag, but what is mine? What am I? That's why my episodes is just always about life and what we got going on. Sometimes we're cleaning out celebrities' dirty bag and how it pertains to our personal dirty bags and how they parallel each other. So it's just ultimately unpacking, sorting through your mess. What needs to go, what needs to stay, what's worth celebrating, what's worth cutting off, what is living.
And,
Yeah.
and in those moments that you're talking to somebody and you're asking them to empty that bag, how often do you come across a one of those tear jerking moments when people start revisiting those memories and things that they thought they had dealt with, that when you ask them that one question and it takes them to that place? How often does that happen in your podcast?
It rarely happens because I'm intentional about my guests. This is why I be messing with podcasters all the time because I've done a few and I've had folks tell me, like, I want you to be um, vulnerable right now, but you can't demand vulnerability out of anybody. My number one priority as a guest is to set the tone. And when you set the tone as a guest, people go, you ain't gonna have to ask nobody nothing. You will not have to ask. First of all, I research my guests. If I have another podcast on, which I've had a few, I'll go listen to episodes so I know who I'm talking to. I will go listen to your first episode and maybe the older one so I can know something because it helps me trim the fat and get to the meat. There's some things I should just know about you. So we can just
Right.
cut through all of that and get to where I'm trying to get to. But because I don't write down notes and everything like that, by the time I bring a guest on, I've watched you long enough to see something about what's going on with your dirty bag in that season that I think you'll want to share with the guest. So when I have a guest on, we pregame before we start anything. We got about 30 minutes till we record because I want you to be your most comfortable self. I want you to get in the mode that you need to get in for this, whatever it is you need to do. Then we start. Sometimes I don't start recording till I feel like they've gotten comfortable enough because I know it's going to go easier for me. I rarely had anybody cry because the people I bring on, they're really certain about the stories they want to tell. So
Okay.
I've actually never had a tearjerker, but I've had people go, and this is exclusive. This is my first time talking about this. And I'm like, oh. So it's always my priority to set the tone because I learned that when you set the tone, the work is going to do itself. So I've had people share some very intimate things, but I've also brought people on that were pretty far along in their journey of self to where these conversations don't bother them. I've had sex workers on talk about what they went through from drug addiction because they were in a place where they did the work and they were healed enough to talk about it. I had
Uh-huh.
somebody that said she used to get beat and this by her man, but because she learned from it, she's in a place where she would never give men money again. Like I tend to have grown women who had been there, done that. Let's talk about it. So they come in because they know what my podcast is about. They come ready because they've already seen examples of how it's going to go down.
Okay. So so your so the Dirty Bag podcast is designed for women only. I
My,
seen a
my,
couple of guys on there that I
yeah, my demographic is 35 to 44-year-old Black women. So for me as a podcaster, I'm very intentional about my audience and the stories I want to tell. So because of
uh-huh.
that, I'm very selective about a guest. You might be really cool and really funny or whatever, but you're not a fit for my audience. Early on,
Right.
I learned my lesson by just trying to bring folks on. I had people DM me like, don't bring her back on. Don't bring this person back. And then I had to look back at the episode like, okay, that person was a little immature for my crowd. That person, what they, So for me, it's learning about what my crowd likes. There have been plenty of men that wanted to come on, but they wanted to come on and argue 50-50. I am 42 years old. We're not having that conversation. They wanted to argue submissiveness. I am, at the time, I'm 40 years old. Why are we having this elementary ass conversation? I'm not going to disrespect the 35 to 44-year-old demographic with these remedial conversations. So it's important for me to say, what conversation does a 35 to 44-year-old Black woman that's a mother, that's had a career, that's a creative, that likes to save money, that loves to listen to a little sexy break. I think about my audience when I bring on a guest. And that's why I do 50% solo episodes, because sometimes y'all just need to hear from me. So
Right.
when people ask me questions, I'm like, y'all know 50% of my episodes are solos. I talk about my life. There's so much about me that I give away for free. So when people typically can't answer them questions themselves, I'm like, then you ain't tapped in. I've done 30 solo episodes talking about everything I've been through. I'm giving you everything you need to know about me. It's whether or not you tap in. So I give both. I give people that my audience really want to hear from, but I give a lot of me. A lot. I answer a lot of questions about me to where, and that's the reason that people are also comfortable with telling me their stories because they've already heard mine. So you know, when you want guests to give you tear jerking stories, you need to give your stories as the host, so they know that you're not somebody that's just trying to this story out of them. Be the example you want to see. I've cried.
Absolutely. I agree. That's good advice. That
Yeah.
is that is great advice. Um, what would you share with somebody right now that has a desire to be where you are, but they're stuck?
I don't even think I'm nowhere for nobody to be at though. I'm still trying to get to where I'm going. Where I am right now is a creator. I'm just stepping into a season where I'm learning how to make this platform everything that I want to put my energy into. So if we're talking about being a podcast, first of all, I'm gonna talk you out of it. I'm gonna talk you out of it because most podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes because people come into it for the wrong reasons. I know why I came in. If you feel like you're a truth teller, if you feel like you have something that you're really adding to the space, you can just do it and you'll know to do it because you'll think about it all the time. You'll want to share a message all the time. You'll want to talk to folks all the time. Figure out your why and make sure it's genuine. I know that we're in a space now where everybody's trying to get everybody, shout out to David Chans, everybody wants everybody to start a podcast. And I totally disagree. Because there are folks that come into this space just looking to make money, that don't know how to
Right.
talk, that can't interview their way out of a wet paper bag, that have the depth of a pebble. So to me, it's figure out your why and understand it's going to be a lonely road. I'm going into year 4. My first year was lonely. It was pure audio. I didn't have the support all the time that I thought I would have. There were times where I dropped an episode and it got maybe 1 like, maybe 3 downloads. Like, if you're not doing it for the right reasons, you will get discouraged very fast. But if you know that you have a community that you're building, an audience that you really here to feed, you'll be all right. You're just going to be pressing along for a minute. So I'm not nowhere yet. I'm in year 4. I have days where I'm like, man, look, something gonna have to
But
shake.
but you are somewhere to those who see where you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they see me creating and building, but you don't see the behind the scenes. I go through it. So,
Absolutely.
but I talk about it too. So the thing is, one, I'm very transparent about my podcast journey on my podcast. So I've talked about them long nights. I've talked about moments where I was like, forget this. I've talked about how my relationships have changed because your relationships are going to change throughout the course of you creating a podcast. You might not necessarily have the same friendships because they don't know how to relate to where you're going, especially if you have any type of success and win and they haven't gotten to where they want to get to or whatever it is they got going on. It can be very lonely. Folks can go from gassing you up to being quiet the next day or the next year. Like when it was time for me to get my first win, there were a lot of strangers that were there.
Uh,
You have to understand, like, treat it like a job and you gonna go through it. Treat it like a job that you don't get paid for a long time. Like, just know what your why is and know that you are gonna have ebb and flows, peaks and valleys. And if you can push through it, you're gonna be all right.
okay. That's good advice. on another question, what would you tell somebody that just they're not in, they don't want to be podcasting, but life right now is smacking them in the face and they're ready to give up because of the hurdles that they're facing? What would you share with that person?
We all going through it. Life ain't easy for nobody. But I mean, you need to get a village around you. I mean, I'm gonna say therapy. Go get a therapist. There are some things, sometimes somebody need to talk you through why you feeling the way you feel. Because everybody got different battles. You might be battling depression. It might be something mental upstairs. We keep forgetting that some people have things going on undiagnosed. Some people have trauma that they need somebody to help them unpack. So because I'm not an advice giver, I'm gonna tell you, get with your village to lift you up. Get with a mental health professional, pastor, whoever it is you go to, get with somebody that has the tools to help you. Because there's a lot of folks out here giving bad information, and I can give some advice right now, but it might not be applicable to where you are. There's a whole lot of things unique about your journey that I know nothing about. I don't know anything about being suicidal. I've never been suicidal. I don't know anything about dealing with identity issues. I've always known who I am. Like there's just so many things we go through, but we got to tap into mental health professionals. That's going to be my tap into somebody that got the tools to help you break free. Don't sit in that dark for too long. It doesn't help you to just sit in your mess and sit in that darkness. You got to talk to somebody. You don't have the option to just try to figure everything out on your own. That's going to exhaust the hell out of you. Get with somebody that has the tools to help you through whatever it is you're going through.
So you won an award though for what you do, right? You
I
you
did.
you took home a big time award that was big time, that says that you are a up and coming giant in this industry. That you won the best podcast award, right?
I won Best of Black Dallas. It was Dallas Weekly's inaugural award, but I won it because of my community. I mean, I don't even know if it's because I'm the best. I think it's just because I have a community that I give a damn about. Because there was some giants in the category. I was happy to just be nominated. I was shocked to find out my name was even in the top six. I remember when I got tagged in the reel on Instagram, like I immediately dropped tears because I knew what type of year I had and how much work I had put into this podcast and what L's I had took and the frustrations, even from the studio down to guests down to everything. Like I was tired and exhausted. Like I got nominated for that award. That award nomination came off after I got my first layoff ever in life. But I knew it was because of my community. Like everybody don't talk to their audience. Like y'all be out here starting these podcasts, folks be in the comment section talking to you, you acting like you Beyonce. So when people see me in person, I'm literally the exact same person that you meet it that I am on the podcast. There is no, I don't turn on a character. There is no character here. It's literally like me. So when you see me, that's me. If you DM me about something, I'll respond. So I think the community showed up. You have to pay attention to the audience you're building. Even if you get one comment, you cannot afford to skip over that one comment. Talk to that one person. Y'all can have a whole conversation with each other. Don't ignore the people that support you.
That's
I
good
was
advice.
happy with just knowing that my name was being mentioned in conversations, that my hard work was paying off, because it's not really about the accolades. I was happy about it then, but it got real dark after that. Some, friends kind of got quiet. Your relationships change after you go through things like that. So I'm happy I won it, but now it's like, but did it actually grow your platform? Not necessarily. Not really. So I'm glad I got it. I'm the queen. No matter what happens next year and the year after that, you can't take that from me. So I needed that because it told me the work paid off. That yes, you actually been working.
Absolutely. I think and you can't downplay it. Like you put a podcast out that beat out whoever else was in the category in that podcast, and you took home the award out of everybody that was entered. So that's a big deal.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
huge.
Shout out to Dear Future Wifey, Dee Dee's Dope Podcast. Shout out to all of them. But I think also I didn't make light of the nomination. So I brought it up all the time, like, hey, y'all go vote for me. So I actually respected Dallas Weekly enough to honor this honor that was being bestowed upon me, which was getting the nomination. So I think it's respecting the entities that create spaces to celebrate Black people. So also, it was me showing respect to Dallas Weekly for creating something like that for Black people. We don't always have spaces where we're celebrated, but for one of the oldest Black newspapers in North Texas to create this to celebrate Black excellence, Black work, Black creators, Black entrepreneurs, me telling folks to go vote and reminding them of this award also is like, but watch what Dallas Weekly is doing as well. So there was a whole lot of moving parts to me pushing that. I'm glad I'm nominated, but look what this Black newspaper is doing for the community. Support Black press. Support your Black local newspapers, people.
Yeah, I mean, you was bringing awareness, and the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
that's
I DM'd somebody that got nominated, and I'm just like, hey, it's an honor being nominated alongside you. Like, if you win, you should let me go accept the award in your honor. And they was kind of like, oh, I forgot all about that. And I'm like, well, that's disrespectful, boy. It just, yeah. So respect your press, respect the Black entities that put on for Black people and Black creatives.
so. What do you got? What do you got on tap right now? What's working in your new bag? What do you got coming up?
I ain't sharing too much. Now I learned some ideas you got to keep to yourself. Obviously,
I totally understand.
I did my first live show last month. It was a sold out show. I was very excited about that. So it's just making me look into how I can do other creatives that I respect and that could absolutely use the stage. So that's going to be my main thing is I definitely got to do more live shows. I loved it. It was my first one. A lot of trial and error, but this bag is looking more like being intentional with collaborations. What I learned in the past year is like, you want to extend your platform to everybody, but you can't. Everybody's not on the same wavelength. Everybody doesn't respect the work the way you do. So you can't cash your pearls before everybody now. So it's
Oh, for
me
sure,
being
for sure.
intentional about collaborations that are going to grow the platform, that's going to grow their platform. I just came back from Podcast Summit, which if you have a podcast, you have no business missing that summit. Because when you are in the room with other creatives, it does something to you. When you walk in the room and there's folks like, hey, you want to record real quick? I got my videographer right here, I got my photographer right here. That rejuvenates you. So to be in a room with other people, like-minded creatives that can hold you accountable, that can challenge you, like everybody with a podcast, you have to do that at some point so that you are not doing the same stale mess all the time and thinking you killing it and you're not. So I came back with a lot of tools that I'm starting to implement. Like we got to watch Steve Harvey's daughter do a session about the art of interviewing. I'm like, okay, so I need to get better at how I interview. People saying, the way y'all are leading listeners to your episodes, you ain't doing it right. You're being lazy. You're going to get left behind if you don't learn these new trends. So, I mean, going to Podcast Summit, it was like, I thought I was doing good. Oh, I got to go back and step my game up. Say less. So,
Yeah,
taking
I missed it. And I seen your photos, and I seen some of the things that you posted out of the summit. I definitely was trying to make that the next one because I think it is like I'm just like you. I got an idea. God gave me an idea, and I ran with the idea. And 20 episodes in, so
you surpassed
I
15.
think.
Go ahead. Most folks don't make it past 10.
Yeah,
You doubled your life expectancy.
you, but I'm an entrepreneur, so I understand I understand the ebbs and flows. I understand when you start a business, you're looking at 3 to 5 years
Oh,
of before you really start to see some things happen in business. But one of the things that I did for this year was like, I'm gonna commit to this podcast for the whole year, regardless of how many views I get or things like that. I'm gonna be committed to producing content for this podcast for the whole year. And I'm 7 months in, and I think I'm doing all right. I only got 5 months left, so It's not growing as fast as I desire, but I'm also not trying to do it to grow exponentially quickly,
You don't want
right?
to do that.
Like too
Yeah.
much growth could be swelling and then it goes away.
Well, you got to run your own race. The thing that I'm most grateful for, my first year of podcasting, I wasn't connected to a whole lot of podcasters. I met some on Instagram, like when you follow certain pod pages, it introduces you to other podcasters. But because I was audio only, I didn't have the pressure of an aesthetic. It was just me, a $35 mic, Zoom, and my guest. And those were my best episodes because we were able to literally focus on the content. The audio wasn't that great. It sounded like somebody was frying chicken in the background, but I was focused on why. My why was very heavy my first year. My first season was only 25 episodes. But even with me being in the studio now and having all these lights and stuff, nothing is beating the first season. That's when you in that grind mode. I have yet to, collectively, those were my best episodes. And I was not following a bunch of podcasters. I wasn't watching what everybody was doing. So I'm grateful that I was in the trenches that first year because I wasn't comparing myself to nobody. I was just doing my little thing.
And that's good advice. It was one podcast that I watched because as I researched, I was like, how do I want my what do I want to do? And I kind of was over all over the place, kind of looking over here, looking over here. Then I found one that I kind of like. I watched their podcast. I like their content. I like their structure. I like how they were set up. And I was like, I could reproduce that. And I heard this dude say one time, he said, it's okay to be a copycat. You just got to know which cat to copy. And I was like, okay. And so I just kind of, I just kind of started putting bits and pieces together, and here we are right now. So, uh, and so yeah. So look, y'all, I want y'all to go follow Miss Cookie on all her social media platforms. This is going to be the easiest way to connect with everything that she has going on, everything that she's doing. Go to her link tree, link it's linktr.ee at the Dirty Bag Podcast. You can go find everything about Miss Cookie that you want to know. You can find everything that she got coming up. You can get on her Instagram and her TikTok, and you can read through all her articles. You can catch her podcast on Spotify just from this link tree. She has a lot going on. If she does something in your city, pull up. I need y'all to go pull her up and go follow her on all her social platforms. Get engaged in her content, join her community, be out here in these streets with her when you see her. She is in your I like how she does her stuff. She puts stuff out, she put her content out and is real direct and right in your face content that's empowering and moving people forward. And go check her out. Go listen to her stuff. If she happens to be live on TikTok, jump in her live. She's engaging. She's gonna say hi to you. She's gonna do all that good stuff. And she is an amazing podcaster that I'm sitting here pulling notes from. She's just dropped some nuggets on me, and I'm sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, okay, I hear it. I hear what she's saying. Yep." So I need for y'all to tap into her community. I need y'all to follow her, and I need y'all to support everything that she got going on. But I do have one last question for you.
It's okay.
What is something that you didn't learn early on that you had to learn the hard way as you got older
In what area?
in
That's broad.
life? That's a broad question.
That life is gonna keep. It don't matter what goes up must come down. Don't get comfortable in any season. You having like the best season of your life, that's gonna change. You having the worst season of your life, that's gonna change. Just keep living and keep your judgment low. Because the things that you judge people for, it will come to your door. So humility, live your life and be mindful of judging how people live theirs. Because the things that you don't think would ever be you can most certainly be you. Just keep on living. Nothing's permanent. None of these seasons are permanent at all.
That's good. None of the seasons are permanent.
Mm-mm.
Ooh, that's a message in there right there.
It ain't permanent. You can go from negative
Ooh,
money you ever made in your life to being like, how am I gonna pay this bill? You can go from having the closest social circle to, oh my God, I never thought I would have to cut these people off. Like, life is going to change. You need to be like a bridge. One of our podcast coaches, CJ, was like, look, you got to be the way bridges are built to sway. It may not look like it, but they're built to sway because things are going to always change. You got to be prepared for the change. I was like, all right.
That is awesome information. It is. I like the seasons are not permanent. I'm gonna have to work with that a little. I might have to take that and dig
Yeah.
into that and create something on that. Actually, that's some
Yeah.
good stuff right there. The
Yeah.
seasons are never permanent. That's
Mm-mm.
good. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. Well, look, you got anything else you want to say to the people before we get up out of here?
Shoot, I can't think of anything else, but y'all, yeah. I mean, that's my message to everybody. Keep living, and when you decide you want to do something, focus on your why more than the success of that thing. Your why will take you far. Your why will take you far. If your why is genuine and intentional, you'll be fine.
You will be fine. You heard it here first. You've been chilling with your boy C. Maurice Ball and Miss Cookie Brown. I love you like a play cousin, and I'm out. Peace.
Hey, it's your girl Cookie, host of the Dirty Bag Podcast, and I am here with C. Maurice Ball and this dope podcast.